let's get to it. So, hello, this is the consulting webinar. My name is Justin. We'll get into that in a minute. I'll be taking you through the workflows and structure for, I guess, the general consulting style business. Obviously, everyone's a little bit different, but I've got a range of different things here. So hopefully we'll cover something that will suit you. Now, this webinar will be recorded. The recording will be automatically emailed to you after the webinar. It will also be available at clickup.com/webinar. So who am I? My name is Justin. I was previously a product manager, trainer, and product expert at ClickUp. I'm now a ClickUp consultant and trainer. So the workflows we're going over today, our consulting workflows, are all workflows that I've pulled from my business. So I'm very familiar with them, adapted them a little for people who have different styles of consulting agency to me. But you'll see what I've worked on for the last little while. Cool. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about sales and incoming projects. So a sales pipeline, hierarchy structure options, a couple of different ways of doing it depending on your size, what type of projects you do, the consulting workflow, how to prioritize tasks and make sure that you can see them easily, what you need to do today rather than just kind of having a bundle of everything, time tracking and billing, dashboards and reporting, and then we'll hit on retainers as well for those of you that are doing ongoing services of one type or another. And then lastly, we'll go to some questions. Okay, so first of all, I want to just quickly go over a couple of hierarchy ideas. Yeah, let's do this first. Okay, so obviously you have your user account. Your user account has access to a workspace, standard. Now, in this idea, this is an all-in-one structure. So I'm basically, when I'm saying all-in-one, I'm talking about sales and also project management. So this is going to work for people who have fairly small projects, maybe quite a few of them, or maybe just getting started out. So probably just the solo people. Anyone in an agency, next couple of ones might work out better for you. So we'll have a space, doesn't really matter what it's called, and then a single list. And our all-in-one list will have tasks that come in, and tasks start out being leads. They go through a set of statuses as leads. Once they are confirmed and paid, they simply keep going through statuses into the project. So you might have, lead, qualified lead, negotiation, deposit made, and then straight away the next status is, to do, in progress, review, done, that sort of thing. So all one kind of flow in one list. The next one is project lists. So this is kind of a medium step. So this is for people who have slightly bigger projects, or it's fairly similar to all-in-one, but it's just got more mental clarity. So particularly if you do have a lot of projects, this can be very helpful. So same thing, user account, workspace space, but here all your sales is encapsulated in one list. So you have all your leads, and once they hit the point of having paid and confirmed, they will move to a new list called projects. So they will kind of become projects. Typically, I'll use automation to do this. I'll get into that a little bit later. And you don't have to just have one project list. You could have, a number of categories of projects, and it would move into the appropriate list, either automated based on some sort of custom field or done manually. Okay, so in both of these hierarchy types, projects have been tasks. So you have a task that's the project, and then subtasks that are the actual to-do items. And this third one, which will fit the bigger projects and agencies probably a little bit more, is a project structure. So same deal. And now there's two types of this, depending on how high up the hierarchy you want to go. So you've got user account, workspace, and in this case, we've just got one space. We've got our same sales pipeline, but now we have a projects folder. And so each project is its own list with multiple tasks in there, and then tasks can have subtasks. So it's just got a little bit more space, a little bit more separated out. And particularly if you do have very complex projects, you kind of want that space. Second version of this is just to have basically a folder per project instead. So account, workspace, our space with the sales in it, and then our project space, where each folder is a project, and then we have deliverable lists. So, this is really getting bigger projects where you're kind of chunking out a list of tasks that needs to be done for each deliverable. Okay, cool. So let's jump into ClickUp now. So as you can see, these are my standard workflows that I use regularly and actually have on this account. So today we'll go through this sales pipeline. So here, each task is a customer, or in this case, a lead, and I've got some statuses here. So they might start out as a prospect, go onto a waiting list, have a call booked, follow up, work might be in progress, and that's kind of my trigger for putting it through to the projects list if we're doing that. And then have the client review the work, and then kind of, if it doesn't go ahead, we've got cold, no-go, declined, and then once the completed can mean the work is done if we're doing an all-in-one, or it could mean, sold and it's moved to the projects list. Okay, as to how you get them in here, obviously you can manually enter them, but what you could also do is have a form. And so the form here, you can put this on your website, you can send it to people, you can either embed it or just have a direct link where people can click on a button and come to this form. The fields here will depend on your custom fields. So the ones that I have is, what is your name, company name, what kind of services are you looking for in case you offer multiple, how can we help, which is just kind of trying to elicit more information from them. When do you need it done by, which will go to the due date, what is your budget, and then any files. So I can fill that out, hit submit, and that will populate a new task in your sales pipeline list. So that's very helpful. From there, you're going to be going into here, talking through with your, either if you're solo, leaving notes for yourself perhaps, or collaborating with other people to get them through to a sold status. Okay, now it might be that you're a consultant in an agency and someone else does this for you. Great, no worries. But if you are a solo person, you're most likely doing this yourself. Okay, so once the client is signed up, so let's say they've gone to work in progress. If you're doing an all-in-one, then you simply have project statuses here and you start moving them through. If you have a project lists, this will now move into the projects folder. And so you have a project list here. There'll probably be a separate set of statuses you'd set up here, whatever works for you. It could be as simple as, to do, in progress, done. Here I've just got to do and done because it works well for my subtasks, which are my actual kind of to-do items within this project. And if you have a project structure, then that task will simply get closed out and it will create a new list in this folder. Now, creating lists can't currently be automated. That will be a manual process. Okay. So let's just make sure we've gone over those three types in ClickUp. So sales pipeline, this is our all-in-one. It goes through statuses here, from our sales statuses through to our project statuses, and it basically stays the same. We can have all of our information in here, notes and follow-up, and the attachments that we need as we go through the project. For our project lists, I've actually got an automation here. And what it says is when status changes, move to list. So if we go into edit that, we can see that when it goes into work in progress, it moves to the list projects. So that's why you'll notice that that one that I changed to work in progress before, it's disappeared because it now exists over here, assuming that I've picked the right projects list. I have a couple of them. Cool. So that's what I ended up doing myself. There is a couple of ways of doing this. You could instead automate it to, you could close that task and say when the status changes to closed, then instead of move to list, you could duplicate it, make a copy and another list. And that's fine too. It just means you have a record for sales and one for projects. But I ended up just deciding to have a single task per project when I was doing it that way. Cool. And yeah, realistically, very similar to all-in-one, but just better mental clarity, having your sales leads in one place, your projects in another place. One note with that is that your custom fields for both lists must be the same. If they're not the same, they'll become the same. because when it copies tasks over, it will also copy the custom fields on it. So if you want like a very different custom field structure between the different lists, that's going to be difficult to maintain with this paradigm. So you can see here, I do have deal size in those here as well. You don't have to display them, but they will exist on those tasks. Cool. If we're doing the project structure, then this will simply get closed, and we'll go into our project structure and create a new list. Most likely, you'll be creating one from a template. So here I'll go to Browse Templates, and we'll pick an appropriate list. Cool. All right, so the benefit of the project structure is obviously that it's totally separate from the sales pipeline. There's no linkages at all. There's no automation going between them. And so you can have totally different custom fields here. You're not going to run into that same problem. And I generally find it's necessary for big projects that can't fit into like all the tasks into just subtasks. So here with project one, we can have as many tasks as we want. And then subtasks within that. There's a lot of space. So if you are doing like probably anything from a website build up to obviously a real build or any larger project, it's going to be best for you. My temptation is to stick with a single project folder and then just have projects as lists. There are a couple of reasons to go to the bigger, project space with multiple project folders, but it's really just if you have really, really big projects with, very deliverables that have multiple steps each, or the second one is if you have clients with multiple projects each, it can be helpful. So you could have a projects space, a client folder, and then a project, multiple projects within that folder. Whereas if you're just doing it by list, you'd have to kind of say, client one, project one, client one, project two, client one, project three, and it can just get messy. So in that case, having folders to represent the client can be more helpful. Cool. So those are our three structures. Now, in terms of getting into the actual work, so let's go into our projects list here. It's nice and simple. So there's obviously a big difference between if you're solo and if you're on a team. Checking on our polls, it looks like we're slightly more people on teams on the call today, but we'll go through both anyway. So if you're solo, obviously it's pretty straightforward. You do the tasks. I often don't assign myself because I have all my filters set up to pull in all tasks because there are no other people's tasks I need to filter out. I find that assigning myself is just an extra step that is generally unnecessary if I'm solo. Due dates, however, I will definitely assign due dates for when things need to be done by to make sure I keep to my deadlines, and then I do my work. Pretty straightforward. For teams, and this will be pretty, standard for most people. This is kind of the core of what ClickUp is really great for. So for teams, you can obviously assign out tasks to different people. And that might be done differently in your company. So I know some people might have like a whole project is assigned to one person. I know for a number of people based on our poll that different tasks within a project will be assigned to different people. So here you're going to be assigning the different subtasks. On a project structure, it might be main tasks. And you can, of course, assign them to multiple people. So this might be the development team and also the graphic design team. That is a ClickUp. You do need to turn that on. If you'd like to just have each task has one person who's responsible for it, you can turn that off and it will force each task to only be assigned to one person. Just depends how you kind of manage your people in your company. Cool. Yeah. Even if people, one project is only worked on by one person, I still would suggest assigning them all. So here you can click on this little button, little dot beside the top task, and then beside the bottom one, and just hold Shift. And it will select all in between, including subtasks. And then you can assign those all to someone very quickly. Now my zoom bar is in the way, so I can't actually get at this multitask toolbar at the top here, but you should be able to see the options. An assignment should be somewhere around about here. So if you click on that, assign them, and it'll automatically assign all of these people. Excellent. Yes, and the reason you want to do that is it's good for reporting. Now, if you're solo, then in your reports, you're not going to be filtering by people. But if you have a team, you're going to want to have, probably going to want to have some reports by your different consultants. I'll split things out. And if lots of tasks aren't assigned, because everyone just knows what project they're working on, then you can't pull in those people-based reports. So if you do have a team, good to assign it regardless. Okay, and then obviously if you are collaborating on a project, you can go into the task that you're collaborating on and leave comments and kind of collaborate here. So you can either leave historical notes, just to kind of have a history of what was done on this project or task, decisions that were made, etc. And that way you always kind of have that log. Or if you use the @ symbol, you can mention another person or team and ask them a question, request help, let them know that you've done something, etc., etc. Now, those can also be assigned. So you can either assign them here after you've made them, or just assign them straight away down the bottom here. And that will turn those into a to-do item that also appears over this side. And they can simply check it off once it's resolved. And you'll be able to see who has resolved it. You can put just about anything in comments. So you can add pictures here. You've got / commands to add extra formatting, things like tables or other things. Just have a look through the list. Type / to get that list. And you've got your standard stuff, emojis. You can also mention tasks or documents in case you're talking about something else. Maybe we're talking about task 2 here. And you can attach files, probably the other useful thing. There's other bits and pieces here, including email, screen recording. I won't go into those today, but nice to be aware that they exist. Okay. Now, when you are collaborating in comments, if you are aiming a comment at someone and you want to make sure they get it, it's good practice just to always tag them or mention them, sorry. Though if they have their notification set up to get notifications about this task, they'll get it regardless. But if you mention them, it just makes sure of it and also highlights it in their notifications. So it makes it easier for people to parse, what do they definitely need to look at, what's directed at them. So always a good idea. Okay, I'd also suggest that you always have good onboarding and offboarding for your tasks. So you can see here, I've got an onboard and offboard subtask in this case. And that will probably be saved as a part of the template. So regardless of if it's a subtask on a task or a task in a list, you're likely to template it. In this case, I'll go into this task, go to these 3 dots up the top here, template setter, save as template. And so the assumption here is that I've set this up with all the right subtasks. It's kind of like for the default for a task, for a new project, sorry. And when I use this, I might then, add some extras. This project has something a little bit different, change it around, but this is my default. So I'll say project, actually I'll say new project. And because this is a task, I'm saving it as a task template. Who can access it? In this case, I'm not going to import the whole task because I don't want to save the assignees, the due date, or the custom fields, any of that. All that I want is those things that I want applied to the next task, which is the subtasks and any checklists in them. So I'm actually going to untick all of these and just save those 2. Okay, so now when we apply this template to another task, what I'm going to get is that set of tasks and any checklists, and that's it, which is exactly what I want. So let's say I'm in my project list here. Okay, XYZ trust. Actually, I'll make a new task instead rather than applying it to an existing one. So I'll go new task here, templates, create instantly from template. I'll go into my task templates and new project. I'll use this template, create it straight away. If you use the load from template, you can like edit some details, change the name before it pulls it in. Cool. I'll rename this to EFG project. Okay, and you can see my checklist there, and I've actually used the wrong one because I've named two the same. Never name two templates the same, otherwise this happens. So I've got two new projects there. So let's try that again with the other one. Yeah, there we go. Now I've got my 10 subtasks, but you'll notice that they have all the assignees. I just kept the assignees. All right. But if I go into that parent project, it doesn't have the due date and the assignees to that, just the stuff in the subtasks. Cool. So that is a very brief overview of templating. The key idea is set up your proper process, including onboarding and offboarding, and template it. To template a list, it's exactly the same process, but the 3 dots are over here. And again, into Template Center, save as template. Okay. Now, I'd always suggest that you use a prioritization method. I don't particularly care if you prioritize your tasks or not, but you do want to be able to see what you need to do today as opposed to in the future. If you have a lot of projects, they might have a lot of tasks in them, and then it's just going to be too many tasks for you to parse, and you never know what to do next. And I find that not knowing what to do next is one of the key things that drives procrastination, particularly in me, and I think it's true for other people as well. So if I have an exact list of here's what I need to do today, I'm much more likely to get to work and get those things done. So ways that you can prioritize, you can obviously use the priority flag. There's also sprints. If you are using sprints, that's a way of time boxing things into a set period. I won't go into that today, but there's obviously various features for sprints in ClickUp that you can have a look at. Custom fields is what I'm going to show you today. And in my case, I've just used a drop-down custom field. Okay, so the options I've used here are on hold, which means I'm not going to do it at all just yet. I'm waiting for something. Oftentimes, this is waiting for a customer feedback or to get back to you or something like that. And I have today, this week, this month, and future. I suggest never using tomorrow because it never comes. When tomorrow comes, it'll still be marked as tomorrow, and so you won't know for sure if you need to do it today or not. It gets very confusing. So I just have kind of time chunks that always kind of go from today up to a certain point. Okay. Now, anything with a deadline should still have a due date. So just because I've marked this, that doesn't mean I don't have a due date. If this project needs to be done by the 12th of March, I still need to have that date in there. So that way I can kind of, when I'm looking at when I need to do it, I can also see the exact date. Still a very good idea to have. And particularly anything marked as future should probably have a date, just because it gives you an idea of when abouts it needs to be done by in the future. Obviously, when you categorize things, you say, okay, I don't need to do this right now, but it's good to have an idea of when will I need to do it. Okay, now if you don't finish tasks, like say for date, this one here is marked as today. At the end of the day, you should review those and update them. Do they stay as today for tomorrow? Am I actually putting them on hold? What's happening? This week should obviously be reviewed on Friday, and this month should be reviewed at the end of the month. Cool. There's also a little trick that I like to use, and that's with automations. So what I would do is go into automations here, add an automation, and I'll say when due date arrives, change the custom field or set custom field prioritization to today. So when the due date hits, it'll mark it as today automatically for me. And that way I don't forget to mark tasks as today when their due date has come up. So that can be really helpful. Okay, it also allows us to create great views. So right here, this is pretty messy. It's pretty hard to tell what I should do first here. But next I'll show you how to look at some views to make this really, really simple. So we use this prioritization custom field in combination with assignment if you're on a team. If you're not on a team, doesn't matter, ignore it. And what we want to pull in is a view of what you need to work on today, as well as what is coming up. Okay, so if I go into my consulting webinar space, you could do this at the everything level, I'm not going to today because I have other data in this account, but just high enough level that you can see all the tasks that you might need to do today. So here's all my projects, everything, all my sales, everything that I might need to do today. And then I've created a new list. So this one I've pinned. So if you go into a list here, you can pin it. So it's really easy to get access to, because this is my task to do today. I've also got one for tasks coming up. And then I leave my basic one as just kind of showing everything, just in case I do need to look at that. It's good for quickly filtering. So my today list, I've got a couple of things. You see here that me mode is turned on, but I haven't actually turned me mode on directly. Because if I go to this list, it turns off. If I go back to this list, it turns on. If you turn on me mode, it stays on, no matter which list you go to. So what I do instead is I turn this one to default to me mode. What this means is when you come to this view, me mode turns on. When you leave it, me mode turns off. I far prefer that. That's much better for me. Okay, so we're only seeing tasks that are assigned to me, or have a comment assigned to me, a subtask assigned to me, or a checklist assigned to me. That's really good. Now, I've been using this for a very long time. However, recently, ClickUp has updated the home function to do a very similar thing. So what I might actually do is I might jump into a different workspace here, and I'll show you the home function. So home, you can turn this line up on and off. It's just what tasks you're planning on doing today. So it's similar to the prioritization method. You might prefer this one. Down here is my work, and that's going to use due dates to base it on what is due today, what is overdue, up next, and unscheduled. And it will include reminders. Any comments that are assigned to you will appear here. Subtasks that are assigned to you will go into this basic structure. Checklist items that are assigned to you won't appear here, which is why I still sometimes use the old kind of view method. The nice thing is you can chuck things or tasks onto your calendar, which is right over here. If this works for you, use it. Fantastic. It's not super editable, but you can do a few things, which is quite nice. Personally, I prefer to use my view here, just because it is totally customizable. I can choose how things are shown and quickly search for things. So the way to set up a today view, if you wish to do this, is default to me mode on. I show subtasks separately to make sure that I pull in any subtasks. If I had that off, then even though there's subtasks that I needed to do today, they wouldn't show up here because they don't get filtered separately. In order to have subtasks filtered separately, they must be shown as separate tasks. So important. And then obviously I have a filter where prioritization is today. Now you could do that. You could also turn that off and simply group by prioritization, which will give you today at the top and then kind of future and tomorrow or this week and this month kind of cascading down. I like to stay pretty focused. So I'll have just today and then I'll have that set up on my coming up. So coming up, very similar, but it's got that group by instead. And I've filtered where prioritization is set. So anything that doesn't have this custom field set doesn't show up. Again, that's optional. You might want to see things in case you've forgotten to set it for something. Up to you. For me, if I haven't set the prioritization, it means that it's just not a relevant task right now. And so I'd rather not see it. Cool. Now, one thing for agencies, if you set this up, it'll default to me mode for everyone. So everyone will see their own tasks, which is great. But if people want to start customizing it, they may disagree on how they want to customize it. So what you can do is you can start saving them as separate personal views. So if I turn this into a personal view, either I can convert the view, which means that this is now mine and no one else can see it, or I can duplicate the view, which means that I'll leave the original one for everyone else and I'll create my own new view. Because I'm the only one in this account, I'll go convert view. And so now if there was anyone else in the account, they would not be able to see it, which keeps this top bar nice and clean. Everyone can have their own view, but still not have a cluttered view bar up here, which is really useful. So highly recommended for agencies when people want to start setting up their own views. Okay, cool. So the basic workflow when you come in is going to be checking your notifications, particularly if you are working with others, just to see if someone's assigned you something or there's something that you need to take care of. Coming into your today view to see what tasks you've got on. And then typically what I'll do is go into my actual projects that I'm working on and just check that they're all on track, that nothing else needs to be marked as today, and make sure that I have my head around everything that I need to do. And then I'll come back to my today view and work from there. So I'll start heading through these tasks and getting them done. Cool. Okay, I'll leave it there for views. I want to talk about time tracking and hourly billing. So we've got a couple more things to cover today before we go to questions. All right. So I generally recommend time tracking. Even if you bill by project or outcome rather than time, I find it really helpful to understand how much time is being spent on a project, if it ends up being profitable or how profitable. It's quite nice. So there is time tracking built into ClickUp. If you wish, you can use another software, Harvest or Time and I, there's lots of them. They have different prices. Some of them are quite expensive, but some of them do have nice reporting if you like that. Myself, I use ClickUp. So I'll show my time tracked custom field here. Now that is a ClickUp. So you can go into the ClickUps here and turn that on. And this is pretty good. So up the top here, you'll see a summary of time that's already tracked. You can see that I've tracked some time. It was an hour. It was on the 22nd of February. It had a tag that was sales, and I can edit that or delete it. Down the bottom is to track new time. And there's three options. You can either just start a timer, and it'll start tracking time now until you stop it. You can manually add time. So say, okay, I did 20 minutes, and you can type in that however you like. You could say, 2 days, 2 hours, and it interprets most ways of typing it out pretty well. And I can save that. And we'll see here, it just keeps adding these individual instances of time tracking to my name, but it also summarizes it. Or we could do a range. Okay, so I started at 7:33, I finished at 8:21, and it will calculate the exact amount of time. Very similar to manual, it's just a different way of entering it. There's a few extra pieces. If we're entering it either manual or through a range, we can choose what day that was done on. Good. Oftentimes I did something yesterday, forgot to enter it. I can go in and chuck that in and it's accurate. There's also a description. So there's just a note on what you were doing. And this is really good for reporting to remember why you track time. So as much as possible, I always try and enter a note. It might be that I was, creating a proposal. It might be that I was doing a certain task, whatever. Labels help you categorize time. You can see here, I've just got sales because I want to know how much of my time on each project was I spending on selling it compared to actually doing the project. What is the ratio? How much time am I spending on sales in general? These are all things I want to know. But you could have multiple categorizations here. You could categorize it between, admin, this and that, parts of your work. If you do multiple services, you might have one per service. Don't do billing like billable or unbillable here because there's a separate function for that. It's a nice little button and you can click it. So if it's billable, click it on, not billable, click it off. So if you are billing by the hour, that's really helpful. If you're billing by project or outcome, probably not useful. I still use the description and the tags, but I don't care about billable. Cool. So those are the inputs. Yeah, and to create a new category, I might have missed that there, just type it in. Hit enter, and it's basically like a tag. It'll just create a new one there. And it'll kind of get added to that list once it's been saved on a task, or sorry, not on a task, on a time tracking entry. I deleted it straight away, so it didn't actually save. That's fine, that's expected. Okay, now that's how to enter time on tasks. The other part of it is how to report on and see the time that was tracked. So for that, we're going to go into dashboards. So I've gone to my dashboards here, and I've got a billing dashboard set up. So I've got various widgets here. Most of them go add widget. Most of them come from this time reporting widget. Billable report, same thing. Just it filters for which ones are billable, which is an option. You can turn it on and off. So what I've got is a billable report up here. Let's go into the settings. So very simple. I'm looking at this month. It automatically pulls in from everywhere. And I'm showing it as the folder first and then the list. And this just happened to work best for the structures that we're showing in the webinar today. You might change this based on what you have. If you have an all-in-one or project list set up, you might prefer to see it per task instead here, so you can see the individual time per project. Just be aware that subtasks pull in separately. Actually, that's a really good point. So because subtasks pull in separately, if I'm using subtasks as like to-do items, I will typically track time on the parent task, which is the project, because that way I all have it in one place and I can see a consolidated figure. Okay, I'm tracking time. I'm reporting on time for all labels. That's fine. For all people, fine. But I'm showing billable time only. Cool. And what I might do here is I'll actually just put on a filter for location. Because I have multiple going on in this workspace, I'm only going to report on time on tasks in this consulting webinar space. Cool. And so we can see now, I've got, so this where it says list hyphen, this means it's a list that's not in a folder. So we've got our project structure here with the various lists inside it, and then some extra lists that are just kind of sitting on their own. We can see the total amount of time estimated for these lists and the total amount of time tracked. So handy. Particularly if we're filtering to only show billable, we can say, okay, how much billable time was recorded this month in each of these projects? And that's really useful. Actually, for this one, I'd probably be tempted to turn off time estimates. That's just kind of in the way, really. Yeah, you can just see the time. That's kind of nice. Okay, then I want to see, get some analytics. So I want to see how much time was spent on sales. So I've got a very similar thing, but I've just put in the time tag of sales. So I want to see only time that was on that tagged with that particular time tag. And here I've just done it by space and user. So I care a little bit less about project now and more about how people are spending their time. And again, I've just filtered it for this location. So we can see consulting webinar at this space, Justin, and we can see how much time I've tracked that had the sales tag on it or categorization. So that can be good to kind of see what am I doing, where am I spending my time, and particularly kind of narrow into one particular tag. Cool. This timesheet, this is a separate widget. So if we go add widgets, time tracking, and timesheet here, it just kind of summarizes how much time you spent on each day. So we can see on Monday, I basically never slept. I recorded so much time. And then Tuesday, I kind of had a quieter day. Wednesday, I hardly did anything. So if you're kind of expecting to, or it's helpful to see how much time you're actually kind of recording each day. It can be easy to end up doing lots of stuff in between projects, particularly if you are billing by the hour. You kind of want your hourly rate to be up. So you want to be billing recording a good amount of time each day, and you can filter that to show billable only. So this could be a report on how much billable time are you recording each day, and each line will be a different person. So that can be a really, really good metric for agency owners who bill by the hour to see each of your staff and what kind of outputs they're doing in terms of billable time. Last one is profitability. And this is just a comparison between time estimated and time tracked. So say, okay, on this project here, we estimated it would take 18 hours, and so far we've done 16 hours and 30 minutes. The key thing here is that this project might not be finished. So obviously, if it's halfway through, this is not very useful. You're more likely to do something like a burn down chart to see how you're going with tasks. But once projects are finished, you can kind of compare, okay, what was the total estimate? What was the actual time they took? How are we going in terms of accurate estimation and profitability? Awesome. Okay, now talking about dashboards, we probably also want to see some dashboards for like an overview of the client or project to see how they're going. And then also get a summarized view of tasks and deliverables that are maybe not on track or at risk or overdue that we want to focus in on checking on. So I've got two more set up for that. So here I've got a client or project overview dashboard. This is a portfolio widget up the top here. And you just add lists to it, and it shows you some basic details about those lists. It's not super customizable, but it gives you a nice little overview. So in my project structure list here, and this does only add lists, not tasks. So you only use this in the case that you're using a project structure setup. So I've got my three projects here. You see what statuses they're in, kind of a quick overview, how many tasks are overdue, time estimate, time tracked, and how much is remaining on those particular tasks. Now, it does go to 0 rather than going negative, so just stay aware of these two numbers as well. There are other columns you can add here. I've chosen not to. I think these are the ones that are useful for this case. Okay. Now, I've also got if you're doing not a project structure, but instead an all-in-one or project list setup, then what I've got here is a task list widget. So what I'll do here is just have tasks listed out, and each one is a project, because in this paradigm, tasks equal projects. So I've got my various fields here that are kind of useful for displaying information. We can kind of see the assignee, due date, start date, time, and then deal size, which is a custom field that I like to use. So again, it's just a quick overview of projects. And down the bottom here, I chucked in an example of a chart. So this one is showing the amount of tasks for each service type. And because tasks equal projects, it's the amount of projects in each service. So service is a custom field that I've got. I'll quickly show you these settings. So I'm just looking at the particular locations, which is my two project lists, using the service custom field, and that's in my dropdown. Actually, it's a label, I think, as my x-axis, and then the number of tasks as my y-axis, and I'm grouping by status. So as these projects kind of go through the stages of being complete, this will kind of change color to show me where each of the projects is at. So that can be helpful. And then lastly, we have our at-risk dashboard, and this is just 4 different task lists, but each one filtered differently. So this one's filtered to show where the due date is overdue. So we have all of our tasks there. Now in the settings, you can show subtasks. So if we are using subtasks as the actual to-do items, and they're overdue, they'll appear here as well. You can see this one actually is one. Due soon, I've just said due date is in the next 7 days. Urgent, obviously priority is urgent, and high priority, high priority. Now you might have more complex filters in this, things that you want to keep watch on, but there's a really large range of filters you can use. There's most likely a way of having one or multiple that can filter down to just what you want to see. So however whatever kind of tasks you care about, there's probably a way of pulling them in so you can kind of get an overview of what's problematic, what needs attention. Okay, that's it for dashboards for now. The last thing I want to touch on before we go to questions is retainers and ongoing services. So retainers can be done in a number of different ways. A lot of them are pretty easy to set up on ClickUp, pretty straightforward, but the most common one is not. And that is selling a bundle of hours and then counting them down as the client uses them up. Yeah, it's just a little bit trickier, but there is a good way of doing it. So first of all, what I'd suggest is having a task or subtask specifically for the bundle of hours. So in my case, I've said I'm doing it monthly. So each month there's a new bundle of hours. And I put this in a separate list just because retainers are different to projects. You could have it in the same list, but I prefer to have it separate. And so I've got a parent task, which is the client name retainer. So I can have a new subtask for each month, which is handy. Now the parent task doesn't recur, but the subtask recurs monthly, which is useful. So it'll kind of automatically pop up with a new bundle of tasks. Cool. So I'll use the time estimate to set up the number of hours available. So here I'm saying that we have 20 hours available each month. And I'll show you what happens if I close this one. So maybe that's done. And I'll go here to show close subtasks. We can still see it. We can also see it's automatically recurred for the following month. So this is March's bundle of hours. So now I've got 20 hours for each month, and the parent task will just keep a running total, and that's fine. Cool. Once I've set up the hours available with the time estimate, I'll use the time tracking to use them up. And this is really useful because it's the only field that can kind of have multiple data entries over time, and you can see each entry individually. You know, if you use a custom field, then it only holds one number and you have to keep changing it. It doesn't record the history, whereas time tracking does record all this history, which is lovely. And then we can see here, I've got this time remaining field. Now this is actually a formula field. And what I've done is I put a formula in there. It basically says, take the time estimate and minus the time tracked, but it's kind of couched within this if function. So if that is less than 0.01, I want to have this nice little none text with an emoji to make it visually obvious. If it just said 0, it's a bit easy to miss, but having this kind of text makes it really clear. So for this client, they've had 20 hours, they used 20 hours, there's none left. And so when we come in here to check on our retainers, if probably something we'll do before we do any retainer work for this client, we'll go, oh, actually, hey, you've got no hours. Do you want to upgrade? Do you want to buy something else? Whatever your system is. Cool. That's pretty much it. If you do want to use this, if you'd like to have that formula, what I might just do is I'll paste it in chat for now. I'm sure our CS team can also get it to you if you do need it later. Awesome. Okay, and that is my main points for today. So I've got about 13 minutes left. I'm going to go to questions. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that at any time during the webinars, all webinars, if you do ask questions, we have a CS team who are on there answering them. So I imagine most of you have asked questions, probably already have them answered. But if you would like to submit a question now, please go ahead and I'll answer them either on screen or one of our CS reps will answer them in the chat as well. Okay, so Nathan asks, what about ongoing projects that are not hourly retainers? So probably you're just going to set them up like as tasks. So you might have like a, ongoing service. And it depends which paradigm you're using. This might be a list if it was in your project structure thing. And it's not hourly retainers. So basically anything else, you're adding a subtask, like, task 1, and you might just have this task repeat. So set it as recurring. Maybe you do this every week. So we'll go weekly on schedule, create new task, cool. And then when you finish it off, it'll recur for next week. That's a little confusing, it's got the same date. And I'm just going to show close subtasks so we can see that a bit easier. Cool. Yeah, so it looks like I created that task twice, but yeah, you get the idea. Let's get rid of these two. So yeah, it depends a little bit on exactly what you're doing. But if it's not that hourly bundle, then you're probably just using standard project setup. So recurring tasks and lists, that sort of thing. If it's not recurring, that obviously, like if it's more manual or more configurable, you'll probably end up using templates rather than recurrence. Okay, Courtney asks, so if you're working on another task from the retainer client, how could you easily track time live? So if you're working on another task from the retainer client, okay, so I think that's a question of where do you track time? So let's say, okay, let's say a client has both a retainer and a project, and maybe they're billed together. So like if a client was paying me for a project and a retainer, and I was doing project work, I wouldn't track it against the retainer. But maybe they're paying for them together, and so the project work comes under the retainer. So let's say I'm doing this task here, but this is actually, let's say another one. Let's go to project A, I'm doing this task here, but I want to track time against the retainer. What I'll do is instead of clicking track time here, I'll go to my little track time thing down here, and I'll find my retainer and track time against it. So when I go here, select task, I'll go browse tasks, retainers, Acme. Okay, so I'm going to track time against this task rather than my current task that I'm working on here, if that makes sense. So it's just a question of where is the correct place to track time, and it may not be the current task you're working on. Cool. Jeff asked, if 0 hours remain in the task, can someone still rack up hours against it? Yes. Yep. When you say 0 hours remain, basically that means you've hit the time estimated. But yes, it's still definitely possible to go beyond that. ClickUp doesn't currently have a like forced stop type function that doesn't allow people to work on tasks. Okay, Bill asked, would you have suggestions on how to track project documents? Client sends you an Excel file and a Word document. Would you store it in OneDrive, G Drive/OneDrive, and then use a link? It depends if you need to edit it. So what you could do is you could upload it to the task, then you have a copy of it. The thing is that you can't, like that's a file that's set. If you change it and make additions, you have to upload the new copy, and that gets irritating. So if you're going to be editing it, then yes, I'd absolutely upload it to whatever your preferred drive thing is, and then link to it, because that way you're linking to the live document, and any updates, if you click on that link, you'll find the updated version of it, if that makes sense. Okay, Anna, yes, this webinar is recorded. Yes, you can access it afterwards. It'll be emailed to you and also available at clickup.com/webinar. Melanie asks, should I use dashboards instead of spaces for content management clients? Okay, key paradigm, dashboards, the only thing they do is report on data in tasks and spaces. So if you don't have tasks and spaces, you can't report on anything in dashboards. You can maybe use like the text widget to write things out, but it's basically like a notepad. So you always need to have things in spaces in order to have things in dashboards. So in pretty much all cases, the answer is always going to be use spaces. You need to figure out how your tasks are before you can pull them into dashboards. Okay. Okay, Jeff asked a good question. Can I add allotments to subtasks but track time against the total at a task level? Yes, I believe that should work. So let's use an example here. We'll go this one. Okay, so we've got 20 hours against this subtask. I'll delete this 20 hours. Okay, so it's now fresh. So, and let's do another subtask here. Let's go test. And let's say on this one, we have a 2-hour time estimate. Okay, now we can track time up here. So we'll go 22 hours. And because there's not a direct link between track time and the time estimate, like it's pretty loose, it's more of a comparison, our formula field's still going to calculate it fine. But these ones will say there's time left. Like the subtask won't understand that this time has been tracked somewhere else. They'll still say 2 over here. But the parent task itself, it's going to say, yeah, there's no time left. Because basically this time estimate is adding up both, and the time tracked is also adding up all the time tracked on subtasks and the parent task. And by the way, again, time estimate, time tracked, both ClickUps, you can turn them on and off. You can also change whether or not they have time added up. So you could turn that function off if you wished. Okay. Tim asked, when creating a template task for a project, is it possible to allocate a default due date, such as the start date plus 2 days for each subtask, so that once all the task is created, all milestones are auto-created? Yes. So let's do that real quick. So it's called due date remapping. What it does is it looks for the very first date in that template and then maps it to whichever day you say, and then maintains gaps. So let's say we have a task and the due date is, I'm going to go the first just to make it really clean. Be aware if you somehow accidentally have a due date that's earlier, they'll map to that instead and they can mess everything up. So be very clear on what is your first date. And then we'll do like subtask 1, subtask 2, and subtask 3. Okay, and this one is going to be on the 3rd, so it's a 2-day gap. The 5th, so it's a 4-day gap. And 7th. Cool. And if we save that as a template, those gaps will be saved, and we have the option to remap based on them. Cool. And I'm just going to save everything for now. Now, this works really well when you're using lists because each task can have a different date. It can be a little bit finicky. There were some bugs with it previously when using it from tasks. And it depends which option. I think create instantly often works the best. Nope. Nope. So you need to get to the place where it allows you a remap. And it keeps changing. Task templates have changed a lot in recent times. In fact, has the option been removed? Gah. Okay, I'm going to leave that one to the support team. Either I'm forgetting where the option is, or it may have been removed with the template changes, the ability to remap task templates. Just because the new template center got released, and so things are a little bit different now. I'm just going to check if we can do it from here. I believe if you go into template center from a task, I believe it will apply that template to this task rather than creating a new one. Yeah, here we go. So this is the option we're looking for. Remap dates. So the parent task due date, we'll set that instead of the 1st, we'll set it to the 8th. And then we'll go use template. And so now I've got 2 days, so the 10th, the 12th, and the 14th. It would just be nice to know where to get to that remap option when creating a new task. And that might be one for ClickUp support. Holly, if you want to chime in there, if you happen to know the answer off the top of your head, otherwise, no worries. Okay, Sarah asked a couple of questions here. Can task due dates be relative based on the completion of another task? So yes, you can set up dependencies. No, it won't affect the due dates. Maybe that's a bad way of explaining it. When you have the due date set up, so let's use our example here. I can set up a dependency between them. If they get moved, the dependency will force the due dates to be moved. But there's not going to be any big flashing red alert saying you're not allowed to start this task because it had a dependency, if that makes sense. So if I made task 1 blocking task 2, subtask 2, then I moved this one forward a day, this one would also move forward a day. So the function in ClickUp maintains the gap between them. It doesn't like do logic of like whether or not you're allowed to start the task or not, if that makes sense. Can you set remap to be the default action for a template? No, it does need to be done manually. Because obviously you need to enter a new date to remap to. Yeah. Okay, do you ever set up lists of tasks? Whoops, I've lost that one. All right. Okay, Chiara asked a question, and this might have to be our last one. We need to get going. If a task should happen monthly, the 1st of the month, and has to be pushed to the 3rd of the month, okay, how can the recurring be set so that it doesn't recur on the 3rd but the 1st? Yeah, good question. Okay, so there's a way of doing this. There is a real chance that it's more complex than is worth dealing with, but I'll show you anyway. Okay, so we've got task 1. It's due on the 1st of the month and it's recurring monthly. Cool. Same day each month on schedule. So now if we change this to the 3rd of the month, it's going to start recurring every 3rd of the month. You can see that here. This is the new recurring features. There is legacy recurring. And legacy recurring had the option to recur based off the original task rather than the current instance. It's also really complex. Well, yeah, it's kind of complex. It's very easy to mess this up and have it just not work. Have a look at this if you really, really care. Otherwise, I would be tempted to just set myself a checklist reminder and say, hey, change this back to the 1st. And when you go to complete it, assuming you have the ClickUp on for I'm just going to turn it on here for, I forget what it's called, incomplete warning. Then what it'll do is it'll give you a warning to say, hey, you haven't finished everything on this task. So if I go to mark complete, it goes, hey, there's an unresolved item. Remember to change it back to the first. Okay, we'll do that and then complete it. It's totally possible to do what you're wanting through the legacy settings. It's just a lot of work, and it may not be worth it. Okay, we are over time for today. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to have their question answered by the support team. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. If you do want to contact me, find out more about what I do, there's a few details there. Otherwise, good to talk with you all, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.